Welcome to Hey Soul Sista, the podcast for women ready to embrace greater joy, freedom, and a soulful life. This is your space for deep conversations, meaningful stories, and inspiring guidance to nourish your body, mind, and spirit. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, follow, like, and share. My guest today is a returning favourite, psychologist, soulful truth teller, and wise woman, Kaz Amos. Kaz joins me again, this time to explore the evolving landscape of relationships in midlife. A time when everything from our bodies to our identities are shifting, and so too are the ways we love, connect, and desire. Kaz, I'm loving the sound of this one.
I'm loving it, and I don't know how many people are scared at the same time because relationships can be scary. Chuck in a few midlife transitions and what do you know?
Absolutely. It was a very dramatic intro. I was trying to make it dramatic.
They are dramatic.
Yeah.
Relationships are dramatic.
They are, and they're one of the most important things in our life.
Well, I think so. They're everything.
Everything.
They're everything. Like we are, I've heard this said so many times, and I don't want it to sound cliche, but we are wired to connect. We are wired for connection. And if that's not part of the reason we're here, then what are we doing? So how do we look after it in this really wacky time of midlife?
In a changing world.
Yeah, absolutely. In a changing world. That's true.
In a world where we are seeing relationship breakdown and infidelity broadcast across the interwebs. And okay, because we've just all been living and seeing this CEO with his HR director.
How about it?
Oh my God.
My stars.
Coldplay concert. Jesus.
But why? You're in public, surely. What are the chances as well? Like 80,000 people or something?
And you're on the kiss cam. Crazy.
Oh,
crazy. But do you know what? Like, I'm going to admit this because I am, I'm always a little bit too much information, too much sharing sometimes. But I'm in a really happy marriage, right? And, I feel really secure in my relationship with my husband and my marriage. But I still saw that and felt something going, like a fear spark going, imagine if that was you. Like, imagine.
No, that's one thing about that image that's portrayed of these two people. And yes, we laugh about it, but I'm guessing that there's a great deal of pain behind
absolutely.
it, a great deal in two families that also saw, what was on display for all of us. And lots of pain come from that kind of action, be it seen or unseen, really. We just happen to see it, but it's also going on already anyway.
And I wonder, do you think the reason why the world is fascinated by that whole situation, I mean, yes, people are laughing at it, but also, again, do you think it does spark a bit of fear into many a person to go, you imagine if that was you?
I think that's a really good, hard question to ask because it means that we're all vulnerable. We're all vulnerable to this. Maybe it's infidelity, but we're vulnerable in our relationships and we want to hold so much, I suppose, of, yes, who we're connected to and what love feels like. We want that so badly. And yet anything could change that. And yes, a picture like that could change that in a heartbeat. And I don't know about you, but I remember early on in being married, there were a couple in our family that we really admired. And my husband and I used to say, we want to parent like they parent. We want to be just like them. And they split, and it wasn't, of course, never is easy. And we were devastated. and I remember speaking to my family member and saying, we were so devastated when your marriage split. And they said, well, what's your problem? It was my marriage. And I said, well, we looked up to how you were doing your life together and we wanted to do that. But obviously we don't know the whole story. We only see what is on the outside. And for you to have split, something more must have been happening that nobody else was aware of, especially not other adults. But, we had faith in their relationship and watching them. And I think maybe, I don't know, are we outsourcing our faith in our relationships to other other relationships by going, oh, they're doing it, we should be able to do it too?
Possibly. And I would say that social media has a big part to play in that, in terms of people, projecting their best selves, projecting their best lives, projecting the perfect family, projecting the perfect relationship. Not too many people put it out there that actually we're struggling times and stuff. Some people do, but I think the majority of the feedback is that when people look on social media, and maybe there's a filter there, you'd know more about that than me, Kaz.
Well, I think we're all looking at the same thing, and I think the expectation is that there is perfection in relationships.
Yeah.
And I know there's not.
Absolutely there is not.
Purely and simply because we're dealing with human beings who are definitely not perfect.
We're all just trying our best.
With what we've got at the time.
With everything, all the baggage that we're dragging along with us.
That is so true. That's so true. Like the lens on how you see the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's different for every one of us.
And we're talking about relationships in midlife today. And I guess that's one of the things about midlife, right, is that we've had half a lifetime of experiences, positive and negative, of traumas, of beliefs that we've developed that really then go on to impact our relationships. And again, Kaz, you as the awesome psychologist who knows way more about this stuff than me, but midlife is a time of transition and change. So it holds true that given that relationships are so important to us and play such a big part in our lives, that there's potentially transitions there as well.
How can there not be?
Yeah.
As a middle-stage lady, middle-stage lady. Midlife, yes.
Glow up.
My body is changing, glowing up sometimes unexpectedly. And even, I know that's just a funny little example, but purely having a hot flush and then not wanting to be touched or to be close. Do not touch me. Do not get close to me. It's not you. It's my body. I have no idea what's happening here. That can interrupt how you communicate in a relationship. I've been heard to say that I've been Tourette's hot, at times, and my swear words all come out, and where's the fan remote, and and stay away, and all of the things that go with it, because it's quite the transition of midlife in this body, the one that I've got, has been tricky, and it seems to have gone over a number of years, not a number of days. And so if I'm transitioning here into something different and in preparation for what's to come in life, it only goes to say that my relationship is also going to be affected by that.
Yeah.
And changing roles, not actively parenting like I have been for all these years.
Empty nesting.
Well, occasionally, and then not, and then yes, and yeah, it's like that.
Yeah. So how do you think our needs in relationships change as we move through our 40s, 50s and beyond?
Big question. Maybe if I look at it in decades, so in your 20s, you probably are going through a really exploratory time of relationships, kissing a few frogs along the way. As you are finding yourself as an adult, you are also finding what type of person you might match with, you might not match with. In your 30s, it's highly likely that maybe you have found somebody to spend a lot of time with, and maybe you want to make a family and go through that period of discovery of yourself as a partner and maybe a parent, or maybe striving in your career. So there's a little bit more of a settled place. In your 40s, well, some of that starts to change a lot. And that's where the body starts to change. Along the way, you can hear the threads of how relationships change in that. So maybe in your 20s, you don't have a one single person that you're going to be with for forever. But by the end of that, you might have found that person. And in the 30s, it's a lot of closeness with that one person, potentially, while you're doing other really serious things like raising kids and making babies and providing shelter and all of those hard things.
Growing a career, if that's what you want to do.
That's right. So a time of commitment and dedication. I think as our families and our lives shift and change, that's when our needs change in our relationships. In our 40s, as our transitions happen with our bodies, I guess, what do we want to do next? And do we get to come back to ourselves because maybe our partnerships and our careers and our children don't demand so much of us? We have a bit more time in our hands and we get to pick ourselves a bit more. That's really nice.
So cool.
I know. It is cool.
And I think it's in the 40s that we really, for many of us, not everybody, but for many of us, we start to do the reflection as you have more time on your hands. How's my life going? What am I happy? What else do I want in my life? What are some of the things that I want to do? My children are growing up now. I really, really want to travel. I want to go on adventures for many a person, or I want to do that hobby I've always wanted to do. We have that opportunity and the time, and I guess priorities change.
And two, for both partners. I know my husband's about to finish up at his workplace in a few months. Is that retirement? Not sure, could be. But that also then leaves his life open to change as well. And I guess that's part of the 50s. Part of the 50s is what comes next. Yes, that empty nest. What do we want to fill our time with?
Do we want the same things?
Exactly. Thanks for reading my mind. That was exactly what I was going to say. I have drawn this Venn diagram of relationships, and I was named actually by one of the group members that got you back, Sista, when I was demonstrating it, and she called it the law of the rings. And it is a Venn diagram, two circles that overlap in the middle. One is me, one is you, and the center is us, where we overlap. And in building relationships, whether it's from the beginning or the end or the middle, like in midlife, I think it's always important to come back and look at that that shape, I guess, and ask ourselves, what do we want? What do you want? What do I want? And then what do we want in that space that we overlap in together? Because that's our connection and that's our sacred, precious space, if that's what we want it to be. And what do we want to do together? The other thing about the circles, I see them like two circles of energy that when they meet and they overlap, these two balls of energy have never met in the universe before, ever, until this time. That's what makes that overlap very sacred.
Unless you believe in reincarnation.
Well, come back again and see if you can get that circle right.
Yeah.
But that space has never existed before in time. So it's really precious and it's really important to honour it as well. But because there's movement in both of these places, it allows us, sometimes life is very, very fast paced for one, but slow for the other. Sometimes life events can draw us very, very closely and tightly together because of what it requires. Sometimes it feels like we're just touching on edges, and that can also feel like stress and strain. I started teaching this model because I think it is a more updated model of the old model of relationships that maybe some of us, our parents or our grandparents had, which was two rings that were linked together forever, and sometimes they're just completely, absolutely overlapping and one cannot move without the other. But I don't think that that's our modern life. It doesn't reflect our modern life very well. We're two individuals with established lives of their own, then choose to come together and then navigate the world from that place. And it's a place of flexibility and acknowledgement that we are moving energy parts. But we've got something really special when we come together.
Yeah.
And how do we want to take care of that?
You know, I remember when I was married in my early 20s, the first time. It's only been 2 times, but the first time was my early 20s.
There's no shame.
No shame. And I remember we got married at the Christchurch Cathedral with the I don't know if it was a bishop then. I think it was the bishop. I don't know, whoever was up there.
Whoever's in charge.
Whoever was in charge then. Anyway, he came to our house and we had the evening where he wanted to just make sure that we were on the same page as a couple. So, you see in the
like a pre-marriage counselling.
Pre-marriage counselling.
We did the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the priest came to our house and it's interesting because, that marriage didn't make it past the end of my 20s. And I often say that really the people who we were when we got together, I was 18 and then, married in our early 20s. That person was very different. We both were very different by the time we got to the end of our 20s. And then I met my now husband in my early 30s. And we've kind of moved and grown together. It's interesting that being in your 20s is such a big time of development. They say your brain isn't fully formed until you're 25.
True. That's true.
Yeah. So, I was married way pre-25.
You had a baby brain when you got married.
Yeah, I had a baby brain when I had a baby.
You did. Yeah, isn't that like thinking back to that?
I know. I was 24 when I fell pregnant with my first baby, had Max at 25. And then, so you're still learning, developing, growing. relationship breakdown ended the 20s. We just grew into very different people, very different values and beliefs that we both had by the end of our 20s. New relationship ended up being my second husband, beginning of my 30s. And yeah, I guess the development of values and beliefs, we've kind of just grown together to this point. But I guess that doesn't necessarily, again, hold true for everybody, that you could be through that whole time, through the decades, having those values and beliefs and interests slowly
shift. And change.
And I would go now at 50, I'm very different to who I was at 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was an idiot.
I
was a rat bag, and I'm sure lots of people people listening would attest. Yeah. Because the same thing, like underdeveloped brain, lots about myself that I didn't understand, that I worked through to understand about myself. And then I suppose when you are doing that stuff in your 20s, when you are self-reflecting, when your brain is coming online, it's like getting fully formed from the back all the way through to your frontal lobe. So your executive decision making and your way to process information is so much sharper. But when you do start to reflect, then you can make different choices about who you bring into your life, because you're more you. You're less your parents, you're less your childhood, and you are coming more into yourself. And to bring that into midlife, another period of transition where, your brain chemistry is changing again, your internal, external's changing. It makes sense that I'm going to have to maybe we do things differently in our relationships to stay connected, or like some people choose to separate, choose to depart, because the values are no longer the same. And because the two people aren't the same people that they started out as.
And for women going through the perimenopause and the pause, there's a whole hormonal thing going on there.
Oh boy.
Change in desire, sexuality, feelings about intimacy.
Your emotional regulation, what your body does on its own, how much it wants to hold on to and how much it doesn't want to let go. Yeah, those things are all part of that period of time too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they can be very challenging it's like the body's doing something, almost like when you're pregnant, if you've had that experience, there's something that is done automatically that you don't have any control over during that period of time. And I felt like menopause was like that, but instead of being like 9 months long, it's more like 9 years long for some people, or 5 years long. And the transition is so gradual. I was only reflecting on the weekend about these decades in my life, and I was thinking about how much exercise was really important to me when I was in my 20s, because it was going to keep me healthy and fit and keep my body amazing. And then in my 30s, when I'm birthing babies and I have no control, what felt like very little control over my body, I got it back together again with exercise. I move into my 40s and I'm, start my 40s off with a marathon, and I'm like charging, and I'm really hard on this body. And moving from my late 40s into my 50s, there's no energy. I had no energy left to do any of that exercise and that hard pushing. And then when I stopped to listen, my body's like, can I please just have a rest? Like, you've been working really hard on me for like 20 something years, lady. Like, can you just let me have a little break? Sleep in every now and again. It's okay. And, me tuning into myself and being able to give myself a break. Well, I'm a kind of person because I'm looking after myself and not pushing myself, being cranky with everybody because I'm tired and I'm exhausted. It's zero tolerance for bullshit, or don't ask me, I don't know. Like, I'm not reactive as much because I'm able to regulate my nervous system, but regulate this changing, fluctuating state, emotionally, physically. Just pay a little bit more of attention to it so I can be kinder in my relationships.
You just said something, and I realise this is a little bit off track, but is it really a thing that we lose our filter as we get older? Because I'm observing that in some women that I know that are older. I'm like, they seem to have lost their filter. Is that like a biological thing? Is that really they just don't give a shit anymore and they're going to say it how they see it?
Well, I have a name for it. I call it the fuck it 50s.
Me too.
Ask Drew Barrymore. I shouted at her when I saw her. Yeah, well... I also, this is my explanation as to where Karen came from. The Karen who was no longer tolerating having a sandwich without the crust cut off, just like I ordered. Thanks very much. I feel, and I don't know this like scientifically or anything, but I do feel like women, some women, not all women, but some women become accustomed to placing their needs lower and lower on the list. After you've been doing that for 20 years, 30 years, you've had a gutful. It's enough. The body's tired. There's not a lot of tolerance. And somebody listen to me, please, and then honour what I need. In part, it's our responsibility to do that for ourselves. So going all Karen on people, although sometimes we need our inner Karen sometimes, but it's not really taking care of our emotional state to, be verbally aggressive to people or to be fed up or to have no filter, because it can be harmful and hurtful to others. But I do think it's a sign that we're not listening necessarily to what our needs are, and we're tired of putting our needs at the bottom of the list.
So we're going to speak out.
Yeah, we're speaking out. We're speaking up.
Speaking up, speaking out.
Yeah, we've had enough.
Yeah.
We don't need to be cranky about it or hurt everybody's feelings. But yeah, I think it's okay for us to have what's ours if that's the way we want it.
So, Kazi, some would say that in the world today that we have never been more connected, but also there's many a person that would say they've never felt lonelier. What do you think is going on with that?
Yes, we are very well connected through the ether.
So do you think that technology is helping relationships or doing the opposite?
I think it can be used as a tool to help relationships if we want. There's actually some great apps that are like to be used in relationships that help us to communicate, hear each other's stories. One of those is Love Maps by the Gottman Institute. They study relationships. They do all the science on relationships. And their Love Maps app has got questions that you can ask your partner if you're out, light, medium, spicy. They've got different categories. So you can use a technology like that to your advantage to increase connection. It can become the very thing that keeps us apart when we get used to using it instead of real life connection.
Yeah.
And lots of people talk about, I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want to talk to somebody else. I'm using dating apps and I can't find anybody on dating apps. There are other ways to meet people as well other than dating apps.
Yeah. I've never used a dating app myself.
Me either. I'm too old.
I don't know how I'd go with it.
Well, look, I can tell you I'm around people who are single in midlife who are using dating apps and with varying degrees of success.
Yeah.
Let me just say it like that, varying degrees of success. And the pattern seems to be I jump on because I'm looking for some company and I use it for a while and then I get sick of it and then I delete it and then I go back and do my life and, be creative and have fun and hang out with my people that I love and then it gets a little quiet and then I download the app again. So, I think that's a genuine pattern that I've seen amongst people in midlife looking for ways to find a connection with somebody.
Yeah. I do have some girlfriends who've been on dating apps, and it is interesting that in addition to looking for connection, that there is that element of rejection as well.
Yeah.
Because if you swipe right or left the wrong way.
Yeah. And what is it like to be rejected? After doing a bit of research for this today, Esther Perel, she's a relationship expert, and she talks about rejection being part of relationships. And it's part of the full spectrum of what we can feel when we're together. And we're not always going to agree with each other. But whether we perceive that as a rejection or we perceive that as, we just are not agreeing on the same thing at the same time. And is that okay? Sure, that's okay. I've been, a lot of word around rejection sensitivity. Of course we are. We're built for connection. How can we not be sensitive to rejection? But do we need to take rejection personally and use it as a weapon against ourselves? Probably not. Whereas I think that's why people feel rejection so much is because they then use that as evidence to confirm the belief that they weren't good enough in the first place.
What part does attachment theory play in that?
Attachment theory is a way of learning how your relationships are established very early on in life. There are 4 basic styles of attachment, from secure all the way through to anxious and avoidant, and variations of those too. And depending on the type of relationship you've had with your primary carer in your early years, that is the basis of your understanding of how to do relationship connection. So if it was really secure, your needs were met, and you felt safe and loved and seen and heard in your early life, then seeking connections as an adult is going to be probably a lot easier because you'll have a solid, secure foundation. If your early life wasn't like that, then when you move into adulthood, first of all, you might notice that you fall into patterns that are similar to the relationships that you formed with your parents, be it anxious, avoidant, or be it secure. Oh, not insecure. So what the best news about attachment theory, though, is that as you move into adulthood, you can change that. You can learn to become more secure. You can learn to identify an anxious avoidant attachment and steer clear, because you can learn to become safe inside yourself, learn to trust yourself. And you know what? We are always going to make mistakes, and don't be too hard on yourself if you do.
Yeah. When couples come to you for therapy, what are some of the common disconnections that you would see?
Those early life filters play a huge role in how individuals see their couple's relationship. So if they've seen dysfunction in their parents, and here's the thing about it too, we don't know our own dysfunction, we only know our own lives. So if we've grown up in a home, and I'll just use like an extreme but clear example, with an alcoholic parent, then that is my normal. It's not surprising in my early adulthood then that I either myself have issues with alcoholism or trouble, regulating my alcohol intake, or I meet somebody else who does. Because again, as a life pattern, I'm familiar with it. My brain understands it and goes, oh, well, as not good as this is, I know it. And if it was an unfamiliar and very sober and caring person, it doesn't look like what I grew up with. So that could be a bit unnerving too. When I'm able to learn to regulate my nervous system and feel secure and safe and trusting of myself, then I can find different people to be with in my life, and I can change that attachment style, and I can become familiar with something different that someone else could offer that's not the same as what I had before. But it I almost see it as a lens. If my lens has been focused in on danger or safety, then that's the filter I look at the world with, and that changes who comes in and who goes out. So yeah, I'm the boss of that eventually.
Yeah. And so how do you work with couples that may come to you because they're having relationship issues?
It's sometimes about exploring what those filters are for each person, because they're often very different.
So funny you say that. I was watching YouTube just this morning, and Orlando Bloom was on there, and he was talking about how he had some sort of not fractured but insecure relationship with his mother. So he was talking about that, about his childhood, and how he didn't really realize or discover that until he was an adult, and he went to a retreat or a program, a conference, something, and it was like the aha moment for him. And he said he had been having relationship issues, and when he went and discovered this and was shown to examine and reflect on the relationship that with his mother and to see her behaviour, he said that was the light bulb moment for him, to go, oh my goodness, I can see how this is playing out in the rest of my life.
I know.
And then make the change, right?
Yeah, because I think we'd like to think the question, what's your relationship with your mother like? What's your relationship with your father like? Is such a cliche psych question. But what that tells us is what that filter, who do I bring in and what am I familiar with? Because I keep bringing sometimes the same problems to the forefront of my life that were in my childhood, but maybe they're not, and this is in couples therapy, maybe they're not relevant to this relationship. Maybe I brought it with me. And if I don't want to bring it with me and I don't want it to keep coming up, what do I do about it? How do I take care of myself in a moment like that?
When people come to you for counselling, support, therapy around their relationships, how many are willing to actually do the inner reflection? Because that's really so important, isn't it? Becoming self-aware and doing that inner reflection, actually seeing the patterns and behaviours throughout your lifetime. Do you actually find people that are like, I don't want to know, I just want to blame the other person? Or are they like, yeah, I'm going to do the work?
I think it goes both ways. And doing your work, I think, is actually the only way, like becoming self-aware, like you said, identifying those patterns, and varying degrees of people in and out in therapy, simply because sometimes one person's already made up their mind and this is the last ditch effort. And some people are just not willing to go with their partner. And maybe I only get one person come and show up. And all of those are telling, that's all information about the relationship.
Yeah.
It's so hard to confront the awful things about ourselves. Maybe that's what we're afraid of in our midlife relationships, is looking at ourselves at maybe the not so great parts of us that we need to change.
So a couple of years ago, I discovered this term, the shadow. And I'm seeing that thrown around a lot now. But really, that's what the shadow is actually self-reflecting, looking within, and maybe examining those parts of ourselves that are not that nice, that are not that great, that are not the best part of ourselves. It's the shadow stuff that we kind of keep hidden down, but then it's also the stuff that can do to the damage if we don't actually acknowledge it, heal it, work with it.
That's right. And in a couple, well, there's probably two shadows.
Yeah.
So, we're dealing with two lots of maybe pain or, unspoken, or stuff that's being denied or held on to or blamed. We're dealing with two lots of that, which makes relationships so much more complex than just doing our own work. We're bringing two people together, those two energies together, and each of those people come with their own stuff. And none of us escape it, really. I even think probably even in secure relationships, because life keeps changing, we're still confronted with difficulty. We're still confronted with tragedy, shit happening, saying something, doing something that maybe wasn't our best choice at the time. And so how we reconnect or repair our ruptures, that's what's really important in relationships. That's the thing that gives us longevity is, can we have a rupture? Right? Can we have a blow up? What is that like? And then how do we repair that with each other? And is that enough then to carry that relationship through? I can say that my husband and I actually asked him for his consent to share this information, but we went through a period of time at the beginning of COVID that it was hard. And I think a lot of those old things were coming up. So, yeah, while everybody's staying home in COVID, we were having our couples therapy for about 6 months. And my conclusion, this is my bread and butter, and I'm doing the thing myself, because we got to a point where we felt like we didn't have the tools. We had a toolkit for 20 years that had worked really well for 20 years, and suddenly it felt like we didn't have the tools that we needed. And honestly, we went and we asked, what are the tools that we need to get through this next bit? No shame, no blame on each other, because we both willingly participated. And yep, it was hard. There were hard times throughout that, but in part because that shadow stuff is there, and the willingness for us both to share with support was one of our best choices.
Kazzy, high five to you and your wonderful husband.
Well, I asked him, could I share it? Because I said, I want to make it okay for people to recognize that sometimes they don't have everything they need, even after 20 years.
Yeah.
Because life changed. Our children were no longer babies anymore, and there were challenges, plus work, plus COVID life, whatever that was. It was a really difficult time in general across the planet. But, for us in our own little world, we just realised, we don't have the tools. Let's go and find out what we need to learn. Communication was massive. We learned to communicate with each other in a different way. We learned a bit more about being intentional with our time that we gave to one another. And those things have been lasting, which we're at 26 years now.
So it
nice.
worked. So it worked.
Yeah.
But so you're the painter that did paint their house and painted well. We talk about that.
I don't want to sell a product that I don't want to buy.
Yeah.
It's a hard product to sell. It's hard.
Yeah.
However, the willingness is for a better outcome. It's for our family. It's for us. And we know that when our kids are no longer in our life, it is us. It's just the two of us.
Yeah.
And I think in midlife, that's a very confronting thing for couples who have spent many years dedicated to their children, dedicated to their homes and their work life, to have this understanding, it's you. It was you at the beginning and it's still you now. Maybe a little different though. How are we going to do this together? Do we even want to do it together for some couples?
Yeah.
So it's a very confronting and difficult time to change
You're
or
right.
to choose to change.
Because some people may go, actually, we're going to go our separate way. We've done this. We're different people. We're going in different directions. We're moving on separately.
And that comes over years and years of living with each other's values and raising children together or raising businesses together and discovering what your values are in amongst those places. If they're different, they're different.
Yeah. When Craig and I became empty nesters, in our 40s. Yeah. In our mid to late 40s. And it was a really tough time. And I remember saying to Craig, I know that I felt this real sense of grief, and I know Craig did too. I felt real grief that our children were one by one moving up, moving on. And I remember making a decision and saying to my husband, we need to go back to a time when we were dating and make that our life again. We're dating, the two of us.
Yeah.
Because and it worked. It actually did work because I, stopped. If ever I started to feel like I was sad and grieving again, feeling the grief, I'd go, no, that's okay. We're just dating. It's like we're dating again. And, after a while, that kind of worked.
It does freshen it. It freshens things up, but it gives you a different intention. So before, when your intention was, raising family and keeping that roof over the heads of everybody as they come and go, you create a different intention. Fill that space with something else.
Yeah. And I guess one of the wonderful things about midlife is that even though we are going through big changes in priorities and a reevaluation of our life and our relationships, that it's also an opportunity for growth, renewed intimacy, and a profound understanding of our relationship.
Tricky, especially if things have quietened down a bit, which, sometimes they do.
So, Kaz, where can people find you? If anybody's listening and they're like, I need some Kaz, because actually after our last episode that we did together, a girlfriend called me, she listened and she said, I really need to have a session with Kaz. Which is beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want.
That's what we want. We want to give people, women, everybody permission to ask for what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can come back to themselves.
Absolutely.
And bring their beautiful selves out into the world and share it. Make the world a better place.
Be happy, joyful, live their best life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find me at kazamos.com.au and you can book sessions with psychologist me through the Hummingbird Centre, and there's a link on my site for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also do speaking gigs, Kaz?
Yeah, I do speaking engagements. I can run workshops at people's workplaces. And I have got I'm hatching a little plan for some group sessions as well in time to come.
You were a workshop facilitator at Got Your Back, Sista, and amazing. The impact that you had in changing lives for those women that we supported at Got Your Back, Sista, women who've experienced the most horrific of traumas, domestic violence. You're a life changer, Kaz.
About that opportunity at Got Your Back, Sista is a place to for me to have people have their pain witnessed, be seen and heard. This conversation about relationships is the same thing.
Yeah.
How do we get seen and heard, and how do we start with ourselves so that we can bring that to where we're going? So, I guess that's what I try and bring, but that's also what I want to bring for myself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Soul Sister.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing again.
Always a pleasure.